We are live. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see everybody's faces and even just people's names. Welcome to TGI, which originally stood for The Great Indoors, until we found out there's like 8 other podcasts called that, and changed the name to TGI. Now it can stand for anything I want. So today it's going to be trapezoid, gong, insects. Welcome. Sorry, I should really write those beforehand, but I think it's funnier to just think of 3 random words. Hello. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cresswell. I am an audiobook narrator, voice person, musician, etc. Anything to keep from having a real job in New York City, normally, currently coming to you from the wilds of Connecticut. This began as a way to keep in touch with some people and share work, and has blossomed into a pretty fun community. And based on the number of sort of new people or people I've only seen once that are here tonight, this is great. So thank you all for being here so much. If you're interested, we do have our past 3 shows on YouTube at this point. You can just search TGICast on YouTube. You can also just go to the Twitter, which is TGICast, and all the links and stuff are in there. There's also now 5 episodes of a podcast where I sit down with a writer. It's all been writers so far. I'm hoping to branch out to visual artists, anybody who wants to talk who's creative, and try to get inside their heads a little bit. Today was an episode with Juan Pablo Mobili, which was, I thought, a whole lot of fun. So I'm going to give you all the assignment of go listen to it, and then come back and tell me if you thought it was fun or if you think I'm no fun at all. All right. With that having been said, we have 5 excellent writers for this evening, or readers, I should say. They have already written their work, I assume. And I don't see any reason to do anything except start. So our first reader actually has been a huge supporter of ours since appearing in the audience. She's been a cheerleader on Twitter, so we greatly appreciate it. So without further ado, Cassie Poormokhtar is the author of Keeping Up with the Jones. Oh, sorry. Went for the idiom. It's not that. Keeping Up with Jones and 11 Grams Stories of Half Souls. She's the editor for Divided by Zero Books, which has published The Thin Line of Life, The Liberation of Earth, A Slice of Death, Veterans of the Belron War, and Spacers, to name a few. She also edits P.S. Barlow's G.I. Low comic collections Blank Firing Adapter, published under Divided by Zero Comics. She's currently working on several comic series with her partner, Matt Sweeney, and experimenting in collaborative improvisation storytelling via Dungeons and Dragons. That sounds awesome. You can connect with her on Twitter. Rather than reading out letter for letter, I'm going to paste her Twitter handle into the chat, and by following Divided by Zero Books on Facebook. All the titles I mentioned during this are available on Amazon. So without any further ado, Cassie, you can take it away.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from Keeping Up with Jones. It's about a female friendship and how female friendships can sometimes be toxic, and it explores the codependency that sometimes gets in there. I'm going to be reading the scene where they initially meet. Even in the bathroom, the bass thumped through my body. The medicine cabinet trembled. Flowery air freshener replaced the stench of sweat and beer. The cool porcelain of the tub was nice under my palms. I closed my eyes and focused on a bead of sweat trailing down the nape of my neck. Was I a complete freak for not enjoying this house party? I wanted to know how to have a good time, yet it had been eluding me since Stacy, Michaela, and I had started going to parties. The door crashed open, and a somewhat familiar girl stumbled in, shutting the door before she fell against the sink. She fiddled with the button on her tight, purposefully tattered jeans. When she reached for the zipper, I cleared my throat, but she didn't seem to notice. Her zipper slid down. I stood up. I tapped her on the shoulder. She looked up, her brow furrowed. Oh, were you in line before me? No, I was in here when you came through the door. Oh, were you in the shower? She giggled and grabbed my sweaty light brown hair. Your hair's dry. What were you doing in here? She wiggled her eyebrows and smirked. I shrugged, taking a break. Oh, did your boyfriend break up with you? She tripped into me, draping her arms around my shoulders. Oops, sorry. She laughed again. Hey, you. She stuck a finger in my face, resting it against my nose. I need help taking this piss, she hiccuped. Can you hold this? She held up a cell phone. I always drop it in the toilet. I took her phone and slipped it into my back pocket and then propped her up against the counter. I'll wait outside the door. No, just stay in here. Turn around or whatever. I want to talk to you. Plus, how do I know you won't walk away with my phone? She pulled her pants down and dropped onto the toilet. I spun around to face the door. Look, this is kind of weird. I reached for the doorknob. I'm Amelia Jones. What's your name? The sound of urine hitting the bowl water filled the silence. I'd seen her around school, but had never felt compelled to get to know her. Yet, as a combination of music, loud chants of shots, 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 and obnoxious laughter worked its way through the wooden door, and she sat there pissing, I felt the urge to stay. I'm Lindsay. I leaned against the door and examined the beach decorations beside my head. Lindsay, what? She snapped her fingers. I heard something fall to the floor. The song changed pace, quickening. Merriman. I listened to the sound of fabric riding up skin and the faucets gushing water, but stayed where I was. Pleasure pissing with you, she said, a fake British accent cropping up. She spun me around and threw her arms around me in a hug. I made an affirmative noise, patting her on the back. I noted the toilet paper was lying on the floor. She pulled away and grinned. How about we go take more shots? I'm feeling a little sober. She grabbed my hand, dragging me from the bathroom before I could consider the offer. Here, she handed me a shot glass full of clear liquid once we'd made it to the kitchen. Thanks, I said, but I'm not drinking. One shot will not kill you, or get you drunk. She put the glass in my hand and tightened my fingers around it. Cheers. She clinked hers against mine, and we tossed the tiny cups back. The liquid burned my throat and flirted with my gag reflex. Woo. She grinned while I tried to keep the disgust off my face. Another. She grabbed the bottle of vodka and poured 2 more. No, I said, I should go find my friends. Linz, I'm your friend. Take this shot and we'll both go find them, okay? I shook my head and opened my mouth to protest, but the shot glass was against my open lips. Drink! She tilted it back. I let my head follow, swallowing the foul fluid as it trickled into my mouth. She downed hers and then pushed me back into the crowded hallway. Fingers wrapped around my elbow, I turned my head to the side, shouting over the music. Look, it's really not a big deal. You don't have to come with me. I'm sure your friends are looking for you. I tripped over myself and blamed it on the lack of space to walk instead of the warm feeling growing inside of me. Don't even worry about it. She pushed through the people, and I almost wiggled free of her grip. My boyfriend isn't missing me. He's probably hooking up with that fucking slut anyway. I frowned. I didn't have a clue what she was talking about, and I didn't care enough to ask. You see your friends yet? She opened the sliding door to the backyard, and we stumbled onto the patio. Lindsay, there you are. Stacy was smoking at the small glass table where I'd left her with Michaela. We really hadn't been talking to anyone before I'd gone to the bathroom, and it didn't look like she had changed that without me. Hey, I said. The grip around my wrist disappeared, and I was a little relieved. But before I could get too relaxed, I found a new weight around my shoulders. I frowned, realizing I felt more relief with her arm there than without it. I'm Amelia Jones. Sorry I stole your friend. She hugged me tighter. I tried to fight the urge to sit down because I knew she was using me for support, but the tingling in my legs was too heavy. I sank anyway, but she pulled me up and laughed. Stacy laughed too, a stream of smoke seeping from her lips and her nose. Sorry, I grabbed at the arms around my waist, untangling myself from Jones. I slowly sat in the closest lawn chair. Jones, I said. Jones, why are you still here? I'd never called anyone by their last name in my life, but it felt better in my mouth than Amelia. Her features darkened. I'm here to kick someone's ass. But just as quickly as she'd gotten angry, her forehead was smooth again, and a toothy grin replaced the thin line. But I got drunk first. Oops. She giggled and plopped down next to my chair, sitting on the concrete. Stacy stared at us. Stace. I grabbed her hand. I swear I'm not as tipsy as it looks. I only had 2 shots. I didn't eat before I came here. It's just hitting me wrong. I blinked several times. I'd never realized how weird eyelids felt. I don't care. She smiled. I don't care. Good luck getting home. Home, Jones said. Are you leaving? I shook my head, watching a couple stumble towards us from the field that Olivia and Harry called a backyard. Right now? No, but later. We should drink more before you go. She grabbed my hand. Promise 2 more shots, okay? She held up her index and middle fingers and wiggled the peace sign. I shook my head. I have to drive. She sighed. I'll make sure you sober up. She let go of me and looked to Stacy. What's your name? Her answer was accompanied with another puff of smoke. I looked around the patio, realizing Stacy had been alone at the table. Hey, where's Michaela? And what happened to you hooking up with Trevor tonight? She left with Schmidt, and Trevor is already fucking someone else. She pointed to the bonfire, and I turned to see. My jaw dropped. 2 naked figures were lit up by the firelight. The flames licked the pile of wood just a few feet from them. With the wrong shift of the wind, they could possibly need a fire extinguisher instead of a condom. Several people staggering around the field avoided them. The longer I looked, the more they looked like animals and less like teenagers. Why does it matter if he's doing her? Call dibs on the next round. Stacy and I both looked at Jones. She laughed. Seriously, you should tap that. He's a looker. Stacy and I glanced at each other. Finally, I gave a small laugh. I'm not drunk enough for this. Do you want to drink, Stace? I guess I'm going to drink a little more since I've already started. Yes, Jones shot up off the ground. Shots, girl. Let's do shots. Stacy put out her cigarette. Yes, let's do shots. She smiled, and Jones clapped, pulling us both back into the house. Thank you.
That was great, Cassie. Thank you. You know, you had me instantly with because just the best summation, at least of my experience at a house party, is standing in the bathroom still hearing the stupid music through the walls. Like that is, you know, classic. So, and just I think especially as a portrait of younger people and maybe a dysfunctional relationship between 2 of them, you know, I think everybody probably had an experience where a very charismatic and possibly dangerous person suddenly takes an interest and sort of you get swept up into this whirlwind that, you know, follows them. And you know, as people commented in the chat, it's very relatable because I think most people have that experience. I don't want to say that if you didn't have that experience, you might have been that charismatic somebody, but maybe that's true. I don't know. But either way, that's excellent. And you know, the little permissions that Jones takes every time there's a hole, she has to make this girl do something, like every single time. Was this based on anything in particular, or is this just sort of creative?
It's based on every manic pixie dream girl I've ever known and, you know, fell into the hole with. So,
okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much. And if people want to read the rest of Keeping Up with Jones, it is available on Amazon, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cassie. That was great.
Thank you.
All right. And we had a guest meow in there in the middle.
Yeah.
I noticed that. Yeah. So we're keeping up with here on TGI. We have a show your pets policy. If you have pets handy, feel free to put them in front of your webcam. If not, that's fine too. Anyways, let's transition to our second reader tonight is Ira. And Ira, forgive me in advance if I mispronounce your name, but I'm going with Sukrungruang.
Perfect.
Ooh. Sorry, I will celebrate privately later. He is the author of the memoirs Southside Buddhist and Talk Thai, The Adventures of Buddhist Boy, the short story collection The Melting Season, and the poetry collection In Thailand It Is Night. He is the co-editor of 2 anthologies on the topic of obesity, What Are You Looking At?, the first fat fiction anthology, and Scoot Over Skinny, the fat nonfiction anthology. He is the recipient of the 2015 American Book Award, New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship in Nonfiction Literature, an Arts and Letters Fellowship, and the Emerging Writer Fellowship. His work has appeared in many literary journals, including Post Road, The Sun, and Creative Nonfiction. He's one of the founding editors of Sweet, a Literary Confection, and is the current Richard L. Thomas Chair and Professor of Creative Writing at Kenyon College. Without any further ado, Ira, take it away.
Thank you, Ridge. I don't have an animal, but I have a toddler who is kind of like an animal right now. So that might happen. I think in one of my readings this summer, he came in and he said, "Daddy, I just turned on an adult movie." And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. So, so that might happen. But, you know, I think this is the great thing about Zoom readings, that anything can happen. I think I'm going to read a piece that I've written during the pandemic. It's a essay that is written in kind of like the liner's notes of a mix CD, and it's really about, well, what our days are like. So the title is called "A Father's Liner Notes During the Pandemic," and it was published in the magazine Waxwing, and in the magazine they also have the YouTube videos to each of the songs I mentioned in here. So I just kind of texted everyone the link there. So, a father's liner notes during the pandemic. 1, Jason Page, original Pokemon theme song. Our days are on repeat. We wake up at the same time. We wear the same things. We follow the same work schedule. Mama in the morning, daddy in the afternoon. If the weather is decent, we play outside, and our play is the same. Chase and kick the ball and chase again. We watch the same TV shows. Or rather, we watch Bodhi's TV shows because he's a toddler, and because everything revolves around him, and because we've been stuck at home and have run out of all the ways to entertain, and because he is lonely, and his loneliness sends him sometimes into uncontrollable fits of tears and screams, and because mom and dad don't have the energy to argue with him, which is an impossible task made even more so now, and because we, his parents, are lonely too, and because we love our boy and spoil him, especially now, and because this show with this iconic theme song and a resurgence the year Bodhi was born has become an addiction, and because we go to sleep singing the song and we wake up singing the song, and daddy hears the song in dreams, and because if we do not watch the show or listen to its opening song, Bodhi will go into uncontrollable fits of tears and screams, and because this song, this show, stills him. So we watch the same TV show, and we watch the same TV show, and we watch the same TV show. 2, Beastie Boys, So What You Want. We plan a trip to the office at school to retrieve the books I was teaching before the semester went remote. It is a good morning. Everyone in a cheerful mood, despite the low-hanging clouds have grayed the last week. Some mornings are rough. Some mornings, Bodhi wakes up cranky and crying and clinging. Today, he sits in the middle of the king-sized bed in fire truck pajamas. He smiles, his one dimple denting deeply into his right cheek. What color do you want to wear today? Deidre asks. She peers from the bathroom doorway, brushing her hair that grew longer in the last weeks. Before all this, her hair kissed the top of her shoulders. Now it falls down her back. Purple, Bodhi says, Daddy's favorite. That's right, buddy, I say. I slip on jeans for the first time in 2 weeks. They feel alien to my skin, rough, not like soft cottony sweatpants. What color toothbrush do you want to use, red or blue? Red. What color toothpaste, Deidre says, blue or green? Green. Bodhi throws his hands up as if he's won a marathon. I smile. I wish I still possessed the same thrill in small things like toothpaste and toothbrushes. He reminds me, especially now, that joy can be found anywhere at any time. What do you want to eat for breakfast? I ask. Bodhi stares at the ceiling, brow furrowed, as if the answer to the question posed to him will save the planet. He makes the universal sound of contemplation, before rendering a decision. Cheese, flat or string, Deidre says. Again, deep contemplation, flat. What do you want to drink, milk or apple juice? Apple juice. All right, I say. Let's do this. I play Beastie Boys on the phone as we finish our morning routines. Bodhi brushes his teeth with his red toothbrush and green toothpaste, and he slips on his purple shirt, and he eats his flat cheese, and he drinks his apple juice, and we dance. We dance in our bedroom. We dance as a family. We dance and it shakes the photos on the walls. We dance the entire morning before we get into the car and make our way through a world that seems familiar and not. 3, Queen, we will rock you. The neighbors are out because the sun has made an appearance. Grills fire up, music blasts from outdoor speakers, a strange mix of cheesy country and bad pop and Spanish hip hop. Most of our neighbors have kids Bodhi's age. It was one of the reasons we chose the neighborhood, so Bodhi wouldn't lack any friends and he could run and play until he collapsed, which he always did. But that was then. Those kids he played with have siblings, and all those siblings are running and playing with each other. Some wave at Bodhi, some don't seem to recognize the world outside the boundaries of their homes. I garden, digging up soil, planting annuals. I am desperate for color, and this desperation makes me obsessed, and my obsession means I go to the nursery with a mask on or online order too many flowers. Bodhi helps. A 3-year-old helping equals throwing dirt at daddy. I create a new game, Save the Worms. When I dig up the soil, Bodhi transplants dislocated worms into flower pots or what he calls worm hospitals. I play my own music. When the sun is out, Freddie Mercury croons. At some point, a worm wiggling in between his fingers, Bodhi stops and watches the other kids. He watches them swing on their play sets. He watches them jump on trampolines. He watches them run and laugh. He knows he can't go to them like he used to, so he watches. He stands statue still. Buddy, I say, I found a big one. He needs help, hurry. He doesn't look at me. He drops the worm into the grass. I'm done, he says, and walks back into the house. 4, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, I Love Rock and Roll. Before his world was reduced to the rectangular lot of our home, we would make the long drive to work and school. For over 6 months, this was our routine. 5 days a week on the same route through the same Ohio fields of the same Ohio farms. Sometimes the early morning fog would be so thick we could barely see in front of us. This made us quiet. Sometimes I listened to a podcast, sometimes songs from a playlist. One day when the fog was at its thickest, Joan Jett came on with her badass voice and her badass riff on her badass guitar. The faint outlines of houses blurred by in a shroud of white. In the living rearview mirror, Bodhi nodded to the beat of the song. The sun filtered through the murk, spreading a blinding gold light. Play that song again, Bodhi said when it ended. It's so cool. You like it, huh? I love it, he said. It's my favorite. A few hours later, when I'd pick him up at school, he would tell me to play Monster Mash. It's my favorite. Okay, I said. I played Joan Jett again. I kept playing her until we arrived an hour later. It was as if Joan were willing the sun through the fog, summoning it to blaze the world awake. 5. I'm Elton John, I'm Still Standing. Bodhi is in the bathtub, suds on the top of his head and shoulders. Toys drown around him, cars, action figures, robots. Deidre's rubber ducky collection floats in a sea of bubbles. Before Bodhi came into the world, Deidre amassed a substantial collection of rubber duckies. I bought some from Hong Kong and South Korea and Thailand. Seldom did the duckies see water. They sat as decorations around the tub or her office. Now Bodhi claims the duckies. They swim on a daily basis. Play my favorite song, Bodhi says. What's your favorite song? You know, Daddy. Is it I Love Rock and Roll? No, he says. Is it the Monster Mash? No. Is it Funk Soul Brother? He shakes his head. What is it then? It's the one that sounds like this. He hums and splashes. Water flies out of the tub, streaking the walls. Deidre painted a week ago. I tell him to chill, to keep the water in the tub. He says sorry and hums again. The tune sounds familiar and new. I don't know that song, I say. I kneel on the floor and sop up water with a hand towel. Yes, you do, Daddy, he says. I don't think so. Frustration creeps into his cheeks, his mother's trait, a red that rouges the cheeks in an instant. You know it. It's like, I'm still standing. And he continues with random words that do not form a coherent sentence. Elton John, I say. It's my favorite, he says. Through our time together, Bodhi and I have listened to many songs, but not this one. And I don't think his mother would play it. Early 80s Elton is not her sound. A week ago, in fact, I proclaimed Elton John was one of the best musicians of our time, like Freddie Mercury, and Deidre posited that Phil Collins was. How are we even together, I said. How do you know this song? My teacher likes it, Bodhi says. It has been 5 weeks since he last attended school. That last day when I dropped him off, they took his temperature and wouldn't let me walk in like I usually did. I remembered him being carried off. Bodhi looking back at me, wondering what was going on. Do you miss your teacher, I say? He nods, suds falling into the tub. Do you miss school? Yes. What do you miss most? My friends. And your teacher? She sings a lot. Bodhi sings Elton again and smiles. Can you play it? I find it on a playlist I entitled Resetting, which I made before Bodhi came into the world, when I thought when I thought there would be no Bodhi to come into the world. The world then was breaking my heart as it is doing now. And that playlist filled with songs by Bowie and Prince and Joni and Billy tethered me to the planet when I thought I would float off. It was my reaction to still being relevant, Eldon said in an interview. This boy in the tub throwing a car up into the air and laughing as it splashes into the water makes me feel relevant, more than relevant, necessary. I watch his joy. I've been watching him for more intently since all of this, watching how he is growing so rapidly, watching how sometimes he stares off into the distance, off into his imagination, watching him live and breathe and love in this strange time. And what is it that Elton says? Looking like a true survivor, feeling like a little kid. We're still standing. 6, the Notorious B.I.G. Big Papa. When it gets to be too much, when your anxiety feels like a vice closing around the throat, when you lose the sense of who you are, you take long drives the way you used to when you were younger, in your teens, feeling teen angst. And the only way to alleviate this tightness is to be alone behind the wheel with the music turned up so high, you can't hear anything. You drive, no destination, with the purpose of getting lost. To lose yourself in rural Ohio is easy. Fields lead to more fields. Roads are so flat you can see miles and miles ahead. Directions north, south, east, west lose meaning because you're headed nowhere, and nowhere can be anywhere as long as you keep your foot on the gas. Picking the right songs is vital. To drive to the wrong song can have the opposite effect of intention, which is to settle and calm so you can exist and thrive. On these drives, the songs are never the same. Sometimes it's some sappy love tune by Air Supply or Chicago or Luther Vandross. Sometimes it's the electric guitar stylings of early 90s hair bands like Bon Jovi or Winger. Sometimes, like this time, it's Dr. Dre and Busta Rhymes and Eminem and A Tribe Called Quest and Snoop Dogg and Queen Latifah and Big Papa. And somewhere between some farm and some small town, on some small road, somewhere an hour far from home, you are becoming more aligned when you receive a text that reads, "He's asking where you are." And you turn on the GPS to get home, realizing, as you always do, you can never truly be lost, especially when someone is waiting. When you arrive, that someone will run and embrace your legs and say, "Daddy," with utter joy. He will hold you tight, bury his face into your thigh, and you will pick him up, noticing in the weeks at home how he keeps growing heavier and longer. And you will kiss both cheeks and forehead, and you will say, "Daddy's back. He's not going anywhere. Let's play." Thank you.
Wow, Ira, thank you so much. This beautiful and just so full of like family reality. You know, that weird mix of like oscillating between things that are hilarious and then things that are so touching that like your eyes fill with tears. Like that's the real emotion of being with people that you love. And just tying in the music too, you know, it's beautiful. I mean, it really
Oh,
is.
thank you.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, I think for me, music has been one of those ways I've been kind of coping with all of it. And I think for Bodhi too, I mean, you know, we've made it kind of a ritual to wake up singing every day to something he wants to do, of course. Like,
Sure.
you know, it's usually Pokemon though.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You know, we don't have children ourselves, but my brother and his wife have a 5-year-old. And during this, you know, just hearing what it's been like to have to try, you know, you had a line early on about how, you know, mom and dad don't have the energy to like argue with him enough, like as much as he would like. So obviously, you know, using music, using dance, using, you know, whatever, first of all, you know, to be very practical, using whatever way you can to get some energy out of him, right?
Yeah.
And then second of all, you know, whatever way you can to connect and engage and, you know, try to give this little person a sense that the world is still going in a way that, you know, it might not be. It was really beautiful. I also, I got a text during that one from a friend of mine who was listening in and has I believe they have a 1.5-year-old, and he just said, can affirm that toddler is toddler is like a slightly more intelligent pet.
Oh my goodness.
That was regarding you being interrupted. I think he has some Zoom meetings where a toddler just wanders into the room. So.
Oh yeah, no, he's famous around the literary world now because he's been interrupting everything, my classes, my my readings, everything.
That's excellent. That I mean, I can tell the amount of affection you have for him, and that it's really touching. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
All right. Oh. I hope nobody thought I accidentally called the child a pet. That was when I misspoke there. Anyway, our next writer, before introducing our next writer, based on her t-shirt, I just want to share with her and everybody really quickly that a fun fact many of you may not know about me is that after college, I played bass in a Judas Priest tribute band, wearing leather pants and the leather vest and the leather arm things, which were furnished to me, thankfully, by the drummer. I didn't have to go get my own leather arm things because I don't even know what they're called. Anyways, rock and roll. Our next reader is Amanda Fletcher. She is the PEN America Emerging Voices EV Fellowship Manager and an alumna of the program. She hosts the Emerging Voices podcast and has written for Coast Magazine, the Orange County Register, and the Los Angeles Review of Books, among many others. Amanda has just completed her first book, and you can find her at, pasting it into the chat, it is amandafletcher.me or on Instagram at @theamandafletcher. So Amanda, you can unmute and take it away.
I'm unmuted. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. We're good. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Trina, for arranging this, and everyone, all the readers. This is really exciting. So everybody who's a writer that's on the call and who's watching, you know, if you've been in a writing workshop, I think we're all familiar with like the shit sandwich, you know, when you workshop pages and you know, you say something, oh, like I really liked this scene, you're very good at setting up scene, and then you say all the things that are garbage, and then at the end you say, you would, you know, keep writing. I can't wait to see the revision. Or so we call that the shit sandwich, where it's like nice on either side, and then the shit is in the middle, right? So this is an excerpt from my memoir that I have just completed the probably 4th draft of. And I write a lot of really intense things. And I think a lot of times, sometimes people are kind of like, I don't know how to react to this. So I'm going to make my own shit sandwich. So this is taking place in the summer of 2002. So what I want to do is I just want to kind of get us all in. And it's like, actually, I'm kind of glad that I went after Ira because I also have a musical connection. And let's just go back to the summer of 2002. And if you can't remember, that's okay. I got you. Give me a second. So one that you didn't talk about, Ira, what about Fat Joe, man? Ja Rule. Put the fucking mic on. You hear that? Does everybody remember this? Got to do with it, babe. What's love? It should be about us, be about trust, babe. Okay, so we're there in the summer sitting by the pool, right? All right. Thursday, October 3rd, 2002, Mesa, Arizona. Last night, my new boyfriend, Chad, took me, his daughter, Presley, and his mom out to dinner at TGI Fridays. I mean, who doesn't love those Jack Daniel's chicken strips? Am I right? Chad ordered a side salad, and when it came, he let Presley poke around in the bowl with her fork. She must have found a mouthful she didn't like because whatever she was chewing, I watched her spit it back in the bowl, and then I watched Chad keep eating his salad anyway. Gross, I said. What? He asked. Didn't you see what she just did? Yeah, he said, so? And then his mom laughed and said, that's nothing, Amanda. Wait until you have kids. As if having kids is the only way you could know this kind of unconditional love. After dinner, we went to Blockbuster. I picked out 3 kinds of candy and 2 movies, Kissing Jessica Stein and Van Wilder. Presley picked out Shrek. She wanted to know if I'd seen it. Not all the way through, I told her. What I didn't say is that I used to try and watch it on Sunday nights when I lived in Huntington Beach. It was the one day of the week I wasn't using any speed, also known as methamphetamine, but we say speed because it sounds less terrifying. Just that Costco-sized tub of red vines. I couldn't even count how many times I'd fallen asleep halfway through Shrek, only to wake up in the morning to see Donkey springing up and down on the screen yelling, pick me, knowing him and the DVD had been waiting hours for me to make a choice, to stop or to play. You're gonna love it, Presley said, 4 years old and full of opinions. It's really good. Okay, I told her. And then we went home and I watched the movie all the way through and she fell asleep on the couch with her dad. When we woke her up to go home, she said, Amanda, you ate all of the candy. Now the next door neighbor, Amy, is here with In-N-Out. We sit on the patio and after we finish our own double-doubles, we steal her daughter's fries. Whatever, Amy says, she's 2. She's not going to eat them anyway. When Amy leaves to put the baby down for her nap, I don't know what to do with myself. I want a cigarette, but it's too hot outside. I pace the living room before going to stand in the pantry. I restlessly move things around, thinking about how I haven't been around this many kids since I left Canada. Since before my mother died, when my nieces and nephews let me dress them in my Cabbage Patch Kid clothes and sing them to sleep with Steve Miller songs. I don't think I want babies, but my body is reacting to them anyway, wanting their attention, in tune with their smells. I squat down so I can feel around the bottom shelf of the pantry, and my reward is a family-sized package of double stuffed Oreos. It's turned on its side and hidden behind a bunch of cans of stewed tomatoes. Once, when I was 16, I'd heard my mother talking about me. She's too much for me, she said. I never should have had children. And it's been 10 years, but I can still remember how it felt to hear her say that. Like something had been cut out of me, leaving a jagged, unfillable hole. I should have known then how hungry my mother was too. I take the package into the living room, slip the Van Wilder DVD in, and sit down on the couch to watch the movie. As the opening music starts, I bite the first cookie in half, gluing it to the roof of my mouth with my tongue to let it dissolve. The sweet of the filling makes my teeth ache and my body shiver with pleasure. I eat the other half the same way. When I was younger, my brothers taught me how to twist the 2 halves of the Oreo apart in order to get at the filling, to lick it with my tongue until it was gone before eating the wet chocolate discs. Both of my brothers have kids. One of them has a stepdaughter who eats too much. He had 2 more kids of his own and put a lock on the fridge. Then he left them all for a dancer, and now he has another son I've never even met. I don't like to eat the filling without the cookie. I like the 2 tastes together. I grab another one, tear into it with my teeth. My other brother had a son that he left the mother to raise. She used to bring my nephew over, and she never left us with enough diapers or a change of clothes. I don't think it's fair to have children you don't know how to love. I grab another cookie and another, And I don't mean to do it, but at some point I reach down and my hand comes up empty. I've eaten the entire package, 48 cookies, every last double stuffed Oreo gone. The next thing I know, I am bent over the toilet with my toothbrush down my throat, forcing myself to throw it all back up. And I'd like to say I stopped myself, come to my senses, convince myself otherwise, but I don't. And it's not over before I know what's happening, and still I do it anyway. Wretch is a verb that means to vomit, and wretch is a noun that means an unhappy or unlucky person. As much as you've forced yourself to throw up over the last 5 years, Amanda, as good as you've gotten at it, it's still an extreme physical act. Your diaphragm and abdominal muscles contract just as violently while your glottis closes to keep vomit out of your lungs, and your sympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive, raising your heart rate, making you sweat, all to release the exertion of the act. It's a workout. And what makes this so fucked up now, worse than it's ever been, is that 33 days ago, you took a sloppy dive out of a boat, hit your head on a rock, and broke your neck in 3 places. There are 3 cracks in your spine, damage to your C2 and C3 vertebrae. The chaplain came in to administer your last rites. You have been in a cervical halo for 30 days. There are 4 screws in your skull and a metal ring around your head, and all of it is attached to a plastic vest you can't take off. You can't bathe, you can't shower. At the hospital, they said that if the bone shifted even a little bit, you could be paralyzed, that you could suffocate. What the fuck are you doing? Too much movement around the pins could lead to infection, surgery, the debridement of diseased bone, tissue grafts, additional external fixators. The halo is an external fixator, a device used to keep fractured bones in alignment. It is outside of yourself and it holds you in place. By this definition, an Oreo is also an external fixator. In the 70s, a mathematician named Howard Moskowitz found the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt to optimize the brain's pleasure experience. He called it the bliss point. Triggering the bliss point also activates the nucleus accumbens. You know what else activates the nucleus accumbens? Things like nicotine and methamphetamine. I could eat an entire Big Mac by myself when I was in kindergarten. I know this because my uncle loves to tell that story. What I hear is that family is food and food is love, and sometimes it's just easier to make brownies than friends. After it's over, I look at myself in the mirror. What do you need, Amanda? Who is it that you're trying to punish? Is it you? Are you the one you hate? My face is swollen and my eyes are bloodshot. What the fuck, I say to my reflection. Do you want to die? And I can't answer because I don't know. Now this is when I would play the music again, but I think you get it. I think you get the point, right? Thank you, everybody.
Wow. Thank you so much, Amanda. I understand the impulse to try to sandwich it, but honestly, the raw reality of that, it's okay to just let the negative experiences out too. I think everybody probably could relate to elements of that experience. I will admit, I was pretty surprised when it took the turn of like, oh, and you had a broken neck at the time. Like that one I did not see coming. But I think, geez, it's hard not to, comment. I'm not going to say it's hard not to. I feel like I need to comment. There was something in there. I think someone quoted it in the chat that it was not. I don't think it's fair to have children you don't know how to love. And for people, at least like myself, who maybe didn't have the best experience of childhood, that resonates really deeply. Not being able to understand exactly, and this kind of speaks to experiences like substance use. It speaks to experiences like disordered eating, risky behavior, all those things, is this underlying sense that all the other people walking around got the instructions and you did not. That was at least how I experienced it. It was like everybody else seems to know, like, Yeah, they went to school, and then
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and then they find a job, and they get married, and they have children, and everything's fine. And I'm like, I'm 30. This was years ago, but I'm 32, and I just didn't drink for 2 days in a row, and I guess that's good. It's kind of, it speaks to the range of human experience, but it also speaks to a whole side section of experience that. I guess all I can say is that you reading those experiences made some of the people here feel seen in a way that maybe they would not otherwise. I think that's the best way to say it.
That's amazing, actually. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the book is out now, or it's coming out?
Oh no, the book is looking for an agent.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and I've just recently found out that it's far too long.
Okay.
So I have to go back in and cut about 25,000 words. So yeah, that's
all
fun.
right. So that sounds like an adventure. But all right. Well, if anyone
Yeah.
knows agents for memoirs, particularly dealing with
all of the things,
difficult but real topics,
yeah.
Reach out to Amanda through her website or on Instagram, or I guess right here, right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much, Amanda. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Our next reader. I feel like the first sentence of this, based on something she said prior to starting this show, has to be said in a certain way. Randon Billings Noble is an essayist. Her collection, Be With Me Always, was published by the University of Nebraska Press in March 2019, and her anthology of lyric essays, A Harp in the Stars, is forthcoming from Nebraska in 2021. Other work has appeared in the Modern Love column of the New York Times, The Rumpus, Creative Nonfiction, and elsewhere. Currently, she is working on her next book, A Lyric Meditation on Shadows, and teaching in the West Virginia Wesleyan Low Residency MFA program. She is also the founding editor of the online literary magazine After the Art. You can read more at her website, which once more I will cut and paste into the chat, randonbillingsnoble.com. Randon, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Rich. That biography sounds even better in your voice. Thank you. And thank you, Trina. And thank you, Noli, too, for introducing me to this series. I came to a reading 2 weeks ago, and it was wonderful. And that made me look forward to tonight even more. I wasn't sure until the very last minute now what I was going to read. But since Amanda took us back to the summer of 2002, I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay that I've never read before, one that I started writing years ago, but one that's been on my mind recently. And it's about living in DC in the summer of 2002, which was the summer of the DC snipers, John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo. And this essay is called Memento Mori. The summer of the snipers was nearly 20 years ago. I lived in DC then and walked its avenues in pursuit of my own life. I remember being very conscious when I was on Connecticut Avenue, running errands, or waiting to cross Nebraska on my way to work. But I wasn't afraid, not exactly. I was just very aware. The pressure of sudden death makes you think about things. I remember feeling sorry for the woman who was shot while vacuuming her minivan, not only because she was dead, but because she became known by so many for something so trivial. The news reports boiled her entire life down to some variation of the epitaph, shot while vacuuming her minivan. I found my imagination taking over, filling in those blanks with something like a chapter of Mrs. Dalloway. So-and-so said she would vacuum the minivan, or mow the lawn, or mail the letter herself. Clarissa Dalloway's walk through post-war London seems romantic because it is set in the past, because she is buying flowers for a party, because she has Virginia Woolf giving her every thought words. Today she might be taking pleasure in cleaning her car, putting a small corner of the world to rights. Only this time, it would not be a car backfiring in the street, but the sound of a bullet that would interrupt whatever it was she was thinking about that last fatal moment. There's something touching about dying over such a simple task. Many of us do these things, load our cars with groceries, pump gas, mow lawns, but now they had a bittersweet significance. You could die for these things. When I went shopping one Saturday afternoon, after 5 people had been killed, the sniper still at large, I made a quip to my friend that I was risking my life for placemats. As I walked along Wisconsin Avenue, I felt quite safe. Traffic was such a tangle that any white van or truck would be immediately apprehended. That was before the Chevy's trunk had been discovered, when we were still all on the lookout for white vans and box trucks. But I still felt very conscious of where I was, what I was doing, and what I was thinking. Could that very thought be my last? There, too, was another bittersweetness. I don't know what it's like to be shot in the head, but I imagine it's a quick and thoughtless way to go. One minute you'd be vacuuming, the next minute, nothing. Is it better this way, instead of lingering in a nursing home or hospital bed? Maybe that was the sniper's dark gift to those of us not immediately affected by the shootings. They provided us with the pressure of sudden death. That pressure, of course, is always with us, but we can rarely fully grasp it. It is impossible to hold death always before us. Our brains aren't wired that way, and perhaps this is merciful. Pandora's box let loose a flood of evils, but in one version of the myth, we are spared the worst of all, the foreknowledge of our own deaths. That the gods deem too terrible, even for the curious to suffer. The summer before the snipers, during my last few hours in Rome, I stumbled upon a tiny paragraph in my guidebook that described a crypt below the church Santa Maria del Concezione. Here, the Capuchin monks had created a fantastic memento mori, several rooms decorated with the bones of nearly 4,000 monks arranged in patterns, both sacred and ornamental, that covered the walls and ceilings. In the last room stood the skeleton of a reaper, clad in a dark robe and holding a scythe made of bone. Beneath him, a small plaque said, "That which you are, I once was. That which I am, so you shall become." If you had to walk through these rooms every day, or even whenever you buried one of your own, would that work? Or would the bones become the equivalent of wallpaper? For most of us, death becomes wallpaper. We can't see the fact of it clearly, although it is always there, hiding in the form of an aneurysm, a car accident, a hole in your heart no one knew about until you are lying on your back in the middle of the sidewalk as darkness falls around you. It takes a reminder from the outside, in this case not a monk's skeleton, but a pair of killers who strike at random, like tornadoes and floods, things we might forecast but can never control. And because these were snipers who shoot to kill, I couldn't help but be reminded of Flannery O'Connor's "A Good Man is Hard to Find." The story begins with a family's road trip, but after they improbably fall into the hands of the misfit and his gang, they are taken into the woods one by one and shot. The daughter-in-law and baby go quietly into the trees, and the 2 grandchildren are dragged off whining and struggling, with no idea what they're actually struggling against. Meanwhile, the grandmother chats with the misfit, seemingly oblivious to the fate that the reader sees all too clearly. When she is the only one who remains, she, too, is shot, and the misfit makes this cryptic remark: "She'd be a good woman if someone were there to shoot her every day of her life." Like the snipers, the misfit is an outsider. He, too, is applying the pressure of sudden, certain death. I can't remember what the old woman says or does to earn this comment, but in some ways I can fill in the blank. The pressure of sudden death forces us to rise to its occasion. It forces us to be conscious of everything we do, when whatever it is could be our last act. In time, the snipers were caught, and their threat faded into the other fears of this world: car accidents, heart attacks, tornadoes, terrorism, memento mori that can be more easily ignored. Now I have to work to remember the feeling of standing on a street corner, waiting to cross Nebraska Avenue, soaking in the sunlight and the smell of fresh cut grass, wondering how it would feel to die at that very moment. I have to work to recall the way the misfit sprang to mind, how I wondered about his victim's last moments and how my own might be. But now I have something else to remember. Long after I visited the Capuchin monastery in Rome, I spent a week at the Holy Cross Abbey in Virginia. This time I was not a tourist, but a retreatant. This community of monks starts their day during the darkest part of night. The rest of the world sleeps as they rise at 3 a.m. to prepare for vigils, the first service of the day. When I arrived at the chapel, there were already 2 monks sitting silently in the choir stalls. A candle burned deep in a corner, and a soft light shone through the door to the monks' cloister. Monks arrived one by one, bowed to the altar, took their places, and sat waiting. At an unseen signal, they all rose and crossed themselves, and then chanted a cycle of psalms. You will not fear the You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. The last service of the day is Compline at 7:30, at dusk in the summer or dark in the winter, and one of the last lines of the service is a plea for a restful night and a peaceful death. After an adoration of the Virgin Mary and a sprinkling of holy water, the monks retire for the night. I walked back to the retreat house under a sky gleaming with stars. That which you are, I once was, the skeleton warns. Grant us a restful night and a peaceful death, the monk asks. There must be a way to keep death in our periphery without growing indifferent to the life we have left to us or becoming terrified that it will be taken from us. There must be a way to balance the tableau of bones with the scent of fresh cut grass on a bright October morning. There must be a way to remember the feeling I had for those 21 autumn days back in 2002, that I was a better woman for having those killers in and around my city, ready to shoot me every day of my life, keeping me for those 3 long weeks in an odd state of suspended grace. Thank you.
Wow, Randon, thank you so much. Obviously, profoundly universal, the awareness of mortality, and the way even during, that essay that you interact with it in multiple different ways is really interesting. I think it gets at a few things. The thing I heard most overarching, because of the sniper bit, obviously, is what we take for granted, right? And the time that we have, and the ways in which we take that for granted. But if you focus on it excessively, it's very easy to spiral into a little hole that you can't come out of. I don't say you in the personal sense or even the impersonal sense. When I say you in this sense, I really mean I have in the past fallen into that trap. But also going to these places, I myself haven't been to the Capuchin temple in Rome, but a couple summers ago, we were lucky enough to go to the catacombs in Paris. Mm-hmm. And it's a very similar thing in that at first you're it's almost too much to take in, that each one of these items, each one of these, what look kind of like rocks at this point, was once part of a fully functioning human being. And that is where you're going to go one day. And while I don't obviously like that, I think American life particularly has become so based on being afraid of being attacked all the time. I really liked what you said about when it's acute, when it's something like the sniper or the example from the Flannery O'Connor story, it changes people's behavior. When it's constant, it just becomes background noise. And I don't think we should go around looking for the specific threat to make sure that, like, I do my push-ups today or whatever. But I do think it's worth remembering that as far as we know, you live once and it moves in one direction, and that it's up to us to figure out what to do with that time. Really beautiful work. Thank you so much. So you've never shared that before?
No, it's part of an essay that was published rather a long time ago, but I've been thinking about it because of now the sort of constant threat of the pandemic.
Sure.
So I was, I also thought tonight I might try to read something that I had never read before. So I looked through some things and found this. And then when Amanda opened the door to 2002, I thought I'll step through it with this big new change in a way.
Perfect.
But, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing it. That was really, really affecting. And, I like, what I really enjoy about the show selfishly is that I get the experience of getting to out loud react to the things that I, feel while listening to people. And, so far tonight, we've had every form of emotion, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't have any good stories about 2002 music either, because I was still listening to metal from the 80s in 2002.
Can I interject for a second?
Sure, of course.
Number one song, 2002, Nickelback, How You Remind Me, I think.
Oh, yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, senior 2002 music correspondent Amanda Fletcher. Anyways, we're coming up on time, but we have one more reader tonight, and then, as we have promised, we will leave the room open until 10 if people would like to hang out. But our last reader tonight is Jacqueline Young. She is a first-generation Vietnamese-American poet. Her chapbook, The Distance Formula, published through Finishing Line Press, considers the many ways solitude breathes life into the seemingly inanimate. She enjoys a good chair and has recently discovered an interest in Japanese ikebana. You can find more of her work in Entropy, Thalia, Hobart, and The Rush. Without any further ado, Jacqueline, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely honored to be here. Right, so I obviously will be reading some poems today. The bath. I float, roll from side to side, favor my right. Sometimes my nipples poke holes in the surface, come up for air. Below, a sea anemone. Its many thin tentacles wave back and forth. When I shave my legs, short hairs float up, eventually sink. Excrement of small fish. I slip. Some round. With wet palms, you trade a plum for a kiss, which I, not knowing what to do, hold on. Cosmographia. We spread the hours in every direction, slid our palms across its terrain. Did time start here, we asked? Again, the first time. List of the afternoon. Warm plum in a summer heat, wet test of fingers, drip of vowels in a curtained room, an oral acquittal in the nothingness of days. What else? What else? We press feet against the cool of walls, under sheets that need to be washed. Blame, as if any old object could contain it. The heart, a pack rat, accumulates loose change, bobby pins. About watching a body dance. Forget the pent heft of epidermis, as if in breath, limbs ready to lift this charnel house from decay. If something is heavy, use your legs, they say. I watched him one morning while he buzzed around up there, up where the mirror touches the ceiling. The couch in the hall cushioned the weight of his fall, so that his body no longer became an anomaly for his wings. Sophistry. The point is, the why hurts too much, but this couch is a good mediator. Carrying my weight, the body says things. I am sad, I am sad. And this couch, with its woolly arm, says, shh. After Mojave. This mattress, whole and heaving, sweat of badlands and other bodies unknown, undergut, faceless, tumbleweed stuck between trailers. 8 months later, still this damp, persistent desert slough. Ignis fatuus. Nightmares like night horses, hooves against my cranium, the sound of an owl. Who's there? Who's there? How to apologize and mean it. 1. Look up synonyms for the word apology. Note the following: gift, reason, whitewash, excuse. 2. Linger over the phrase mea culpa, the way it suggests cupped palms, an attempt to contain water or something longer. 3. Remove your coat, fashion it into a bowl, arm over wooled arm. How to do things with words. What does it do to confess when all that follows is more cruelty, as if we didn't have enough to carry, as if in the act of confession we were compelled to a reworking? Better the lie, better the bottle whose letter remains untarnished by the sea. Tomato, tomato. You say tomorrow, I say right now. Let's call the whole thing off. Acquiesce, as in child's pose. The instructor tells us to spread our knees, make room for our bellies to rest. My belly is full of last night's excess. The liquor rolls, I roll with it. An hour or two of guided meditation. The bathroom fan chants while I, in half lotus, pluck stubble from my belly. Dreaming of gnocchi. Couch potato, too lazy to roll, leans against the pillow, stares at its reflection in the blank screen. And I have 3 more. Origins of the Milky Way. Supine my breasts, happily nourish no one. Contents of the Voyager Golden Record. Last night I dreamt I was floating alone in the ocean, fished, letting stars fall. You can be here, but only right now. Early in the year, the northern bobwhite seeks cover on dry ground. Shy thing, plumage settling into woody plant, closed scrub, chaparral. I watch it as it watches me, one eye concerned with the rippling of my skirt, the way my feet shift, loosen dirt.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Jacqueline. The one that you chose to end with is perfect in a couple of ways. One is that the only thing that I really like that we hadn't had mentioned yet tonight was birds. So thank you. Got the bobwhite quail in there. But secondly, you can only be here now. Your work has such like a radical presence. Like I felt as though I was in those moments with you. just encapsulating these perfect little, and you know what it said in your biography, or what you'd written in biography about the way solitude breathes life into the inanimate. You know, that is really what I felt to some extent, was this sense of zooming in, laser focused on that present moment and trying to describe it in a way that not only makes me understand where you were, but almost feel as though I'm there. I'm really curious, has all of your work always been sort of these brief, just sort of, I don't want to say, they're not small at all, they're massively expansive, but they're relatively brief?
I mean, when I was younger, everything was so grand that at one point, I actually can't remember when it happened. Maybe 8 years ago. I just started to. I write big and then I cut and cut, and I began this habit of doing that, and I think I'm maybe a little addicted to it.
Well, I will say it works very well. I mean, the only thing, and obviously this is not, do you have, I guess you have things published in journals, magazines. Do you have any collections published?
I have one chapbook.
Okay. What was that? Sorry.
The Distance Formula.
The Distance Formula. Okay, because I feel as though I need to read or hear one of them, and we can't obviously do this on the show, then take like 3 minutes to sit there and then move to the next one. Like that's kind of
Definitely.
Yeah, the size of what's internal in your work. So thank you so much for sharing that. It was really wonderful. All right. That will bring this episode of TGI. Do we have episodes? What are we? Readings? Let's say readings. I don't want to have episodes. Podcasts have episodes. The podcast has episodes. And if you were interested, you can go listen to that podcast. We're on everything but Apple, because something's gone wrong and I don't want to call them. But we will figure that out. You can also just catch up with the show on Twitter at TGICast. That's the best place for all information. Yes, as Trina said, you can look us up on Spotify. Those of you who rock Spotify, we're also, if you go to Anchor, you can find our site, and it has a bunch of providers. At any rate, thank you guys all so much for coming. If you know someone who you think might be a good fit for us, we are always looking for referrals. If you want to just tell us their name now, you can send us an email. As Trina just said in the chat, send us all the friends. The way this thing has worked fundamentally is we started with a decent sized group, but it's just been friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. So that's what has apparently become a community. At least I'm going to keep calling it a community because it feels like one. And I really enjoy spending Friday nights here with you guys in this chair for now, probably at some point in August in a different chair, because we have to go back to New York. But with that, we are going to leave the room open until 10 p.m. at least, if people want to hang out, network, hobnob, chat, whatever. And thank you guys again for coming. I will end the recording, not end the meeting. Oh my gosh. Oh, the recording already ended. Did you do that, Trina? No. Oh, it says still record. Oh, I see. They move things every time they update Zoom.